The great hall of the Galactic Council was cold. It was always cold, because the alien races who built it came from frozen worlds. Humans had worked here for 200 years, but no one ever thought to make it warmer for them. Captain stood in the center of the hall. Around him, 1,000 alien eyes looked down from high seats. Some had 4 eyes, some had none. Some glowed in the dark like dying stars. All of them looked at with the same expression: disgust. "The council has made its decision," said the High Speaker. He was a tall creature with gray skin and a voice like breaking glass. "Humans are no longer welcome in Allied space. You have 30 standard days to leave." Did not move. His face showed nothing. Behind him stood Commander, her hands folded behind her back. She was smaller than, but her eyes were sharp like knives. She had served with him for 15 years. She knew what he was thinking. "May I ask why?" said. His voice was calm. The High Speaker made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You are weak. Your bodies break easily. Your lives are short. You bring nothing to this alliance but problems." "We have served this council for 2 centuries, said. "We have built your stations. We have grown your food. We have mapped your trade routes. We have." "You have done the work of servants," the High Speaker said. "Any species could do what you do. You are not special. You are not needed." His jaw tightened, felt her anger like heat on his back, but he raised one hand slightly and she stayed silent. "Very well," said. "We will leave." He turned and walked out of the hall, followed. Neither of them looked back. Outside, the station was busy with life. Aliens of every shape and color moved through the corridors. None of them looked at the 2 humans. It had always been this way. Humans were invisible here. They did the hard work. They fixed the machines. They grew the crops, but no one saw them. No one thanked them. "They will regret this," said quietly. Shook his head. "Maybe, maybe not. It does not matter now." "It matters to me," said. "My grandmother built the water systems on this station. My father designed the air filters. 3 generations of my family gave their lives to this place, and they throw us away like garbage." Stopped walking. He looked at with tired eyes. "I know," he said. "I feel the same, but anger will not help us now. We must think about our people." Took a deep breath. "How many ships do we have?" 47, said. "Enough to carry everyone, but barely." "Where will we go?" Looked out a window at the stars. Somewhere out there beyond the borders of Allied space, there were worlds no one had claimed. Empty places, dangerous places, but free. "We go where no one wants us to go," he said. "We find our own home." The next 30 days were the hardest of his life. He had to organize the evacuation of every human from every station, every planet, every outpost in Allied space. There were millions of them, families with children, old people who had never known any other home, young people who were angry and wanted to fight. Engineer Wu was one of the angry ones. He was young and strong, with quick hands and a quicker temper. He worked in the main power station, keeping the reactors running. Without him, the station would go dark in a week. "Let them see what happens when we leave," Wu said. He was packing his tools into a small bag. "Let the whole place fall apart." "That is not our way," said. "Then what is our way?" Wu demanded. "We work and work and work, and they spit on us. We smile and bow and say thank you, and now they kick us out like dogs." Put a hand on Wu's shoulder. "I understand your anger. I feel it too, but we must leave with dignity. We must show them who we really are." "And who are we?" Wu asked. Smiled slightly. "We are humans. We survive, we adapt, we build. That is what we do, and we will do it again somewhere new." Wu was silent for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Fine, but I am not leaving them any repair guides. Let them figure out the reactors themselves." Almost laughed. "Fair enough." On the last day, stood on the bridge of his ship, the Morning Star. It was an old vessel, built by human hands decades ago. It was not beautiful, but it was strong. It would carry them to whatever future waited beyond the stars. Stood beside him, watching the screens. "All ships report ready," she said. "Everyone is aboard." Nodded. He looked at the station one last time. He had been born there. His parents had died there. He had fallen in love there, gotten married there, buried his wife there. It was the only home he had ever known. And now it was gone. "Send the final message," he said. Pressed a button. His voice went out to every human ship, to every family waiting in the cold darkness of space. "This is Captain. Today we leave behind everything we have known. We leave behind our homes, our history, our dead. We leave behind a galaxy that does not want us, but we do not leave behind who we are. We are humans. We have always faced the unknown with courage. We have always built something from nothing. We have always survived, and we will survive this too, together." He paused. In the silence he could hear his own heartbeat. "Set course for the outer rim. Let us find a new home." The ships moved as one, 47 points of light sailing into the darkness. Behind them, the great station grew smaller and smaller until it was just another star in the sky. No one on the station watched them go. The aliens went about their business, glad to be rid of the weak little humans. The high speaker celebrated with a feast. He gave speeches about the purity of the alliance now that the inferior species was gone. But deep in the station, in the places no one ever visited, machines began to hum strangely. Warning lights blinked in empty rooms. Pipes that Wu had maintained for years started to leak, just a little, just enough. The collapse had already begun. No one noticed yet. And far away, sailing toward the unknown, the humans looked forward, not back. They did not know what waited for them. They did not know if they would survive. But they knew one thing for certain. They would never beg to be wanted again. The first problem appeared 3 weeks after the humans left. It was small, so small that no one paid attention to it. On Station Prime, in the food production wing, the automatic watering system stopped working. The crops that fed 10,000 aliens began to dry up. The station manager, a large blue creature named Vox, called for repairs. "Send someone to fix it," he ordered. His assistant looked at the repair logs. "The human who maintained this system is gone, sir. He left with the others." "Then send someone else." "There is no one else, sir. The humans handled all food production maintenance." Vox waved a massive hand. "How hard can it be? Water goes in, food comes out. Any fool can do it." They sent a team of engineers from the mechanical division. They were skilled workers who had built starships and weapons systems. They looked at the watering system and did not understand it. The pipes were strange. They twisted and turned in ways that made no sense. Valves opened and closed in patterns that seemed random. The whole system was held together with small repairs and clever fixes that only humans understood. "Who designed this?" one engineer asked. Another checked the records. "A human named, she worked here for 40 years. She retired last year." "Where is the manual?" There was no manual, had kept everything in her head. She had trained her replacement, a young human named Bora, who had trained her replacement, and so on. The knowledge had passed from human to human for generations. Now it was gone. The engineers tried their best. They replaced parts that looked broken. They adjusted settings that seemed wrong. The water started flowing again. For 2 days. Then the whole system flooded the food wing. 3 months of crops were destroyed in an hour. 10,000 aliens went hungry that night. This was just the beginning. Across Allied space, similar problems appeared. On Mining Station 7, the ore processors stopped working. A human named had kept them running for 30 years with nothing but wire and hope. Without him, the machines broke down completely. Production dropped by half. On Research Station 4, the atmospheric controls failed. The air became too thin, then too thick, then filled with strange smells. A human scientist named Me had balanced the system perfectly for decades. She had even improved it, making it more efficient than the original design. Her improvements were not in any record. She had just known what to do. The council received reports every day: equipment failures, system crashes, supply shortages. They held meetings and argued about who was to blame. "This is sabotage," the High Speaker declared. "The humans broke everything before they left." "There is no evidence of that," said a council member named. He was old and careful, one of the few who had always treated humans with respect. "The systems are simply failing because no one knows how to maintain them." "Impossible," the High Speaker said. "These are simple tasks, basic work. If humans could do it, anyone can do it." "And yet no one is doing it," said quietly. The High Speaker ignored him. He ordered investigations into possible human sabotage. Teams searched every station for hidden bombs, secret programs, anything that could explain the failures. They found nothing. Because there was nothing to find. The humans had not broken anything. They had simply left. And without them, everything they had built and maintained and improved began to fall apart. Engineer Wu had kept a journal during his years on Station Prime. In it, he had written down everything he learned about the power systems, every trick, every shortcut, every emergency repair. He had planned to pass it on to the next generation of human engineers. When he left, he took the journal with him. Why would he leave it behind? It was his life's work, his knowledge, his gift to his people. Now that knowledge sailed through deep space, heading toward the unknown, while the reactors on Station Prime began to overheat. The maintenance crews tried everything. They followed the official procedures exactly. They consulted the original blueprints. They called experts from other stations. Nothing worked. Wu had modified the reactors years ago to make them more stable. The modifications were small and clever, and they were not in any official record. Without those modifications, the reactors ran hot. Too hot. "We need to shut down Reactor 3, the chief engineer reported to the station manager. "Shut it down. That provides power to half the station. If we do not shut it down, it will explode." They shut it down. Half the station went dark. Essential systems switched to emergency power. Hospitals ran on backup generators. Shops and restaurants closed. People sat in the dark and complained. The High Speaker was furious. "This is unacceptable. Find solutions." But solutions required knowledge, and the knowledge was gone. On the agricultural worlds, the harvest season arrived. These planets had been terraformed by humans centuries ago. Humans had studied the soil, the weather, the local organisms. They had developed special farming techniques that worked with the alien environment, not against it. When the humans left, they took their knowledge with them. The alien farmers who remained tried to continue the work. They planted the same seeds in the same fields at the same time. They waited for the crops to grow. The crops died, not all at once but slowly, painfully, like something sick and weak. The soil was wrong. The water was wrong. Something was missing, some secret ingredient that the humans had added, some special care they had given. A scientist named had spent her whole life studying these agricultural worlds. She had written hundreds of reports about soil chemistry, water cycles, and plant biology. Those reports sat in databases that no one had ever read. Now was gone, and no one knew the password to her research files. "We could ask the humans for help," suggested at a council meeting. The High Speaker laughed. "Beg the weak species to come back. Never. We will solve these problems ourselves. We are the superior races. We built an empire that spans 1,000 worlds. We do not need humans." "With respect," said, "our empire was built on human labor, human knowledge, human sacrifice. We are only now learning how much we depended on them." "Then we must learn to depend on ourselves," the High Speaker said. "This discussion is over." But the problems were not over. They were only beginning. Trade ships began to get lost. The navigation routes that humans had mapped were complex and dangerous. They wound through asteroid fields and around gravity wells and past dead zones where communication failed. Human navigators had memorized these routes over generations. They knew every twist, every turn, every hidden danger. The new navigators used official star charts. The official star charts were wrong, not very wrong, just a little wrong, enough to send ships into asteroid fields, enough to strand vessels in dead zones for weeks, enough to make merchants afraid to travel. Trade slowed, supplies ran short, prices rose, people began to complain, then to protest, then to riot. And in the dark corners of stations, in the neglected maintenance tunnels and forgotten service areas, the machines continued to break down. Warning lights blinked in empty rooms, pipes leaked, wires sparked. The great civilization of the Galactic Council, built over thousands of years, began to crack. No one knew how bad it would get. No one could imagine the darkness that was coming. They still believed they were strong. They still believed they did not need the humans. They were wrong. Far away, beyond the borders of Allied space, 47 ships sailed through the stars. The humans aboard them did not know what was happening behind them. They did not know about the failing systems and dying crops and lost ships. They were too busy building their own future. But sometimes, late at night, Captain would look back at the stars they had left behind. He would think about the great stations and the alien cities and the life he had known. And he would wonder if they missed the humans yet. They did not yet, but they would. Soon. 6 months after the humans left, the Galactic Council held an emergency meeting. The Great Hall was no longer cold. It was freezing. The climate control systems had failed and no one could fix them. The High Speaker sat in his high seat, wrapped in thick robes. His gray skin had turned pale from the cold. Around him, the council members shivered and complained. Some had brought their own heating devices. Others had simply stopped coming to meetings. "The situation is serious," an advisor reported. His voice echoed in the half-empty hall. "Food production is down 60% across all worlds. Power failures are happening daily on major stations. Trade has nearly stopped. We are facing a crisis." "Tell me something I do not know," the High Speaker snapped. "Several member worlds are threatening to leave the Alliance," the advisor continued. "They say the Council has failed them. They say we cannot even keep the lights on." The old council member spoke up. "Perhaps it is time to reconsider our position on the humans." "No," the High Speaker said immediately. "We will not crawl back to them like beggars." "Then what will we do?" asked. "Our people are hungry, our systems are failing, our economy is collapsing. Pride will not feed our children." The High Speaker stood up, his robes falling around him like shadows. "We will adapt. We will learn. We will overcome. That is what great civilizations do." "Great civilizations do not exile the workers who keep them running," said quietly. The High Speaker's eyes burned with anger, but before he could respond, alarms began to sound throughout the station. Red lights flashed. The ground shook. "What is happening?" the High Speaker demanded. An engineer ran into the hall, breathless and afraid. "The main reactor is failing, sir. We cannot stop it. We need to evacuate." For a moment, no one moved. The great leaders of the galaxy sat frozen in their seats, unable to believe what was happening. Then panic took over. Council members ran for the exits. Guards tried to maintain order. Chaos filled the ancient hall. Did not run. He sat in his seat and watched the destruction of everything he had known. He thought about the humans he had worked with over the years. Good people, hard workers. They had deserved better. The station did not explode. The evacuation teams managed to shut down the reactor just in time, but the damage was done. Station Prime, the heart of the Galactic Council, went dark. Emergency power kept people alive, but nothing more. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The Great Council had fallen. The center of civilization was broken, and no one knew how to fix it. On the agricultural world of Harvest Prime, the situation was even worse. This planet had fed 100 worlds. Its fields had stretched from horizon to horizon, golden with grain and green with vegetables. Humans had turned a barren rock into a garden. Now the garden was dying. Scientists' research files had finally been opened by a team of code breakers. Inside, they found detailed instructions for maintaining the soil, managing the water, and protecting the crops from local diseases. They also found warnings. The ecosystem of this planet is artificial, had written. It requires constant care. Without proper maintenance, it will collapse within 1 year. That year was almost over. The alien farmers tried to follow instructions, but the instructions were complex. They required equipment that had been taken by the humans. They required chemicals that no one knew how to make. They required knowledge that had gained over a lifetime of study. The farmers did not have a lifetime. They had weeks. The crops failed in waves. First the wheat, then the corn, then the vegetables. The fruit trees stopped producing. The animals that depended on the crops began to die. The whole system collapsed like a house of cards. Famine spread across the Alliance. Worlds that had depended on Harvest Prime for food found their supplies cut off. Rationing began, then restrictions, then riots. People fought over bread. Families went hungry. Children cried themselves to sleep with empty stomachs. The great civilization that had looked down on humans was starving. And the trade routes made everything worse. The navigation maps that humans had created were not just directions. They were survival guides. They told pilots which paths were safe and which were dangerous. They warned about asteroid fields and radiation zones and gravity traps. Without those maps, space travel became a game of chance. Ships disappeared. Merchants refused to fly. The flow of goods that kept the economy alive slowed to a trickle. Even when food was available somewhere, there was no way to transport it safely. A merchant captain named tried to make a delivery run to a starving world. He was brave and experienced. He had flown these routes for 20 years, but he had always followed the human navigation guides. Without them, he was lost. His ship entered an asteroid field that the official map said was empty. The asteroids were small but fast. They tore through his hull like paper. The ship broke apart. The food, enough to feed 10,000 people for a month, scattered into the void. Survived in an escape pod. When rescue ships found him 3 weeks later, he was half mad from hunger and fear. He kept saying the same thing over and over. The maps are wrong, the humans knew. The humans always knew. On Station 7, Engineer Wu's old workplace, the situation reached a crisis point. The ore processors that Wu had maintained were completely broken now. The mining operation that supplied metal to half the Alliance had stopped. A young engineer named had been assigned to fix the problem. She was brilliant. She had graduated at the top of her class. She had designed systems that won awards and praise. But she could not understand what Wu had done. The modifications Wu had made over 30 years were invisible to her. They were built into the machines so deeply that they seemed natural. She did not know they were there. She only knew that the machines did not work the way they were supposed to. "This is impossible," said, staring at the broken processors. "According to the blueprints, this should work perfectly, but it does not work at all." Her assistant checked the maintenance records. The human who ran this system made many changes over the years, small changes, improvements. Where are the records of these changes? There are no records, he just made them. Sat down heavily. She had been working for 3 days without sleep. She had tried everything she knew. Nothing worked. How did one human keep all of this running? She asked. How did he know what to do? Her assistant had no answer. Far away on a small planet at the edge of known space, the humans were building something new. They had found a world that no one wanted. It was cold and rocky, with thin air and little water. The perfect place for people who were used to doing impossible things. Captain walked through the growing settlement. Everywhere he looked, he saw humans working. They were building shelters, digging wells, planting seeds. They were doing what they had always done, surviving. Commander found him watching the sunset. The sky turned purple and gold, strange colors for a strange world. "The first crops are growing," she said. "His daughter says we will have food within 3 months." Nodded. His daughter was named. She had inherited her mother's knowledge and her mother's love for growing things. She would help them build a new garden in this empty place. "Any news from the Alliance?" asked. His face darkened. "Our scouts say things are bad, very bad, stations failing, world starving, ships lost. The Council is falling apart." Was silent for a long moment. Part of him felt satisfaction. They had been thrown away like trash, and now the trash collectors were learning how valuable they had been. But another part of him, a larger part, felt only sadness. "They did not have to do this," he said. "We would have helped them, we would have served them, we only wanted respect." "They did not want to give respect," said. "They wanted to feel superior, and now they are paying the price." Turned away from the sunset. "The price is too high, people are dying, children are hungry, this is not what I wanted." "What do you want?" asked. Thought for a long time before answering. "I want our people to be safe. I want our children to grow up free. I want us to build something that lasts, but I also want—" He paused. "I want them to learn, not to suffer, just to learn." "Some lessons require suffering," said. "Yes," agreed, "but the students do not have to die." He walked back toward the settlement, leaving alone with the strange purple sky. Behind him, the stars came out one by one. Somewhere out there, a great civilization was falling apart. And the humans kept building. 1 year after the exile, the Galactic Council was no more. It did not end with a battle or a declaration. It simply stopped working. The High Speaker, once the most powerful being in known space, sat alone in a dark room on a broken station. He had no guards, no servants, no power. The races that had once bowed to him had abandoned the Alliance to save themselves. Only remained. The old council member had stayed when everyone else fled. He had watched the collapse happen, piece by piece, world by world. Now he came to the High Speaker with news. "We have found the humans," said. The High Speaker lifted his head. His eyes were dull with despair. "What?" "Our scouts located their settlement. It is beyond the outer rim on a world called New Dawn. They have built a colony there." "A colony?" The High Speaker laughed bitterly. "The weak species builds a colony while our empire falls." "They are not weak," said quietly. "They never were, we just refuse to see their strength." The High Speaker stood slowly. He was thin now, worn down by stress and hunger like everyone else. "What do you suggest?" "We ask for help." "Begs, you mean?" "Yes," said. "Beg, crawl, whatever it takes. Our people are dying, our children have no future. Pride cannot save us now." The High Speaker walked to a window. Outside, he could see the ruins of what had been the greatest civilization in the galaxy. Ships drifted without power. Stations stood dark and empty. The stars themselves seemed dim, as if the universe was ashamed of what had happened here. "Send a delegation," he said finally. "Ask them to come back. Offer them anything they want. They may refuse. Then we deserve what comes next." The delegation left 3 days later. It was a small ship, old and battered, one of the few that still worked. Led the mission himself. He brought gifts, rare metals, precious stones, ancient artifacts, tokens of apology from a dying civilization. The journey took 2 weeks. The navigation was difficult without the human maps. They got lost twice and almost ran out of fuel. But finally, they reached the outer rim and the world called New Dawn. What they saw amazed them. The planet that had been empty a year ago was now covered with settlements. Fields of crops stretched across valleys. Buildings rose on hillsides. Ships moved through the sky, carrying goods and people. The humans had built a civilization from nothing. Ship landed at the main settlement. A crowd gathered to watch. The aliens stepped out nervously, surrounded by humans for the first time in a year. The humans did not attack them. They did not shout or threaten. They simply watched and waited. A man walked through the crowd. He was tall and straight-backed, with gray in his hair and calm in his eyes. Recognized him immediately. "Captain," said, bowing low, "I come on behalf of the Galactic Council." "There is no Galactic Council," said, "not anymore." "No," agreed. "There is not. I come on behalf of those who survive, those who are hungry, those who are afraid. I come to ask for help." Studied the old alien for a long moment. Behind him, and Wu and the other human leaders watched silently. "Why should we help?" asked. "You threw us out, you called us weak, you said you did not need us." "We were wrong," his voice cracked. "We were arrogant and blind and foolish. We did not see what you gave us. We did not appreciate what you built, and now everything is falling apart." "We know," said coldly. "Our scouts have watched your collapse. We have seen the starving children and the dark stations and the lost ships. We have seen everything." Fell to his knees. The gesture shocked the humans. No alien had ever knelt before a human in all of history. "Please," said, "I do not ask for myself, I ask for the innocent, the children who never hurt anyone, the old ones who cannot survive on their own, the sick and the weak and the frightened. They do not deserve to die for our mistakes." Silence fell over the crowd. Looked at the kneeling alien, at the gifts piled around him, at the desperation in his ancient eyes. He thought about all the years of service, all the insults, all the dismissals, all the times humans had been treated like tools instead of people. Then he thought about the children. "Stand up," said. Rose slowly, hope flickering in his eyes. "We will not return to the Alliance," said. "That life is over. We have a new home now and we will not leave it." Hope faded. "Then you will not help." "I did not say that," stepped closer. "We will not be your servants again. We will not bow and scrape and accept your contempt, but we are not cruel. We do not want your people to suffer." "What do you want?" asked. Turned to his council. Wu and the others gathered close. They spoke in low voices, debating, arguing, deciding. The aliens waited in tense silence. Finally turned back. "We will send teachers, engineers, farmers, doctors, navigators. They will show your people how to maintain the systems we built. They will share our knowledge freely and completely." "That is generous," said. "What do you ask in return?" "Three things," said. "First, you will acknowledge what humans contributed to your civilization. No more pretending we were nothing. No more erasing our history." Nodded, "Done." "Second, any human who wishes to leave your worlds and join us here will be free to go. No restrictions, no punishments." "Of course." "Third," his voice hardened, "you will never exile another species again, not humans, not anyone. You will learn to treat all beings with respect. All beings have value. All beings deserve dignity." Was quiet for a long moment. These terms would change everything. They would end the hierarchy that had defined the Alliance for thousands of years. The strong would no longer rule the weak. The powerful would no longer ignore the powerless. "The High Speaker will never agree to this," said. "Then the High Speaker can watch his people die," Wu said sharply. Flinched, but he knew the young human was right. There was no choice anymore. The old ways had led to destruction. Only new ways could bring survival. "I accept your terms," said, "on behalf of all who remain." Extended his hand, took it. The first handshake between equals in the history of their two peoples. That night stayed in the human settlement. He ate human food and drank human water and slept under a human roof. The next morning, he walked through the fields and the workshops and the schools. Everywhere he went, he saw humans building, creating, growing. They had started with nothing and made something wonderful. They had faced exile and chosen hope. They had been called weak and proved themselves strong. "How did you do this?" asked. "How did you build so much so quickly?" Smiled. "We did what we have always done. We worked together, we helped each other, we never gave up." "We had thousands of years and 1,000 worlds," said. "You had 1 year and 1 planet, and yet you have more life here than we have anywhere." "Because life is not about power," said. "It is not about control or domination. It is about connection, purpose, care. You built an empire on the backs of others. We built a home with our own hands. That is the difference." Looked at the sunrise over New Dawn. The light was golden and warm, full of promise. He thought about his own world, cold and dark and dying. He thought about all the mistakes his people had made. "Can we truly change?" he asked, "after so long?" "Everyone can change," said. "The question is whether you want to, whether you are willing to do the hard work, whether you can admit that you were wrong and try to be better." "I want to try," said. Nodded. "Then that is a beginning." A week later, left New Dawn with a ship full of human volunteers, teachers and engineers and doctors who had agreed to help rebuild the dying worlds. They did not go as servants. They went as equals, as partners in a new way of living. The work ahead would be long and hard. Many things were broken beyond repair. Many people would still suffer and die. But for the first time in a year, there was hope. And hope, as the humans knew, was the most powerful force in the universe. 5 years had passed since the exile. 5 years since Captain had led his people into the unknown. 5 years since the Galactic Council had collapsed and everything had changed. The universe was different now. Stood on the balcony of his home on New Dawn, looking out at the city that had grown around him. It was beautiful. Buildings of white stone rose against the purple sky. Gardens filled every space with green and gold. Children played in the streets, laughing and running, free in a way that humans had never been before. They had named the city Hope. Found him there as she often did. She was older now, with lines around her eyes and silver in her hair, but her spirit was the same, sharp, strong, unstoppable. "The delegation from Sector 7 has arrived," she said. "They want to discuss the new trade agreements." Nodded. These meetings happened often now. Alien worlds that had once ignored humans came to New Dawn seeking partnerships, not as masters seeking servants, but as equals seeking friends. It was still strange to him, after a lifetime of being looked down upon. "How are things on the old worlds?" he asked. Pulled out a data pad and scrolled through reports. "Improving. Station Prime is fully operational again. Wu's students have rebuilt the power grid. Harvest Prime is producing food at 70% capacity. Its agricultural program is spreading to other worlds. And the people. Better, not perfect, but better. There is still hunger in some places, still fear, still resentment, but the worst is over." Was silent for a moment. He thought about the journey that had brought them here. The pain, the loss, the struggle, and then the rebuilding, the growing, the becoming. They had turned exile into freedom. They had turned rejection into independence. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if they had never pushed us out," he said. Laughed softly. "We would still be fixing their pipes and growing their food and being invisible. We would never have known what we could become. So we should thank them." "No," his voice hardened. "We should never thank anyone for treating us badly, but we can recognize that we grew from the struggle. We found ourselves in the darkness. That belongs to us, not to them." A knock on the door interrupted them. Wu entered, no longer the angry young engineer but a leader respected across the galaxy. He had trained thousands of technicians on dozens of worlds. He had rebuilt systems that everyone said were impossible to fix. and he had done it all while never forgetting who he was or where he came from. "The High Speaker wants to see you," Wu said. Raised an eyebrow. "I thought he was dead." "He is dying. He has asked to speak with you before the end. His ship arrived an hour ago." Considered refusing. The High Speaker had been the one who ordered the exile. He had called humans inferior. He had celebrated when they left. Why should give him the comfort of a final meeting? But was not the same man he had been 5 years ago. He had learned that holding onto anger was like holding onto fire. It burned the holder more than the target. "I will see him," said. The High Speaker's ship was old and worn, barely functioning. It landed in a field outside the city, surrounded by curious humans who had never seen such a thing. The great alien who had once ruled a galaxy emerged slowly, supported by 2 guards who looked more like nurses. He was thin. His gray skin had faded to white. His eyes, once burning with pride, were dim and hollow. He looked at the human city with something like wonder, like a man seeing paradise from the gates of hell. Met him at the edge of the field. They stood facing each other, the man who had been exiled and the one who had done the exiling. "Captain," the High Speaker said, his voice was barely a whisper, "thank you for seeing me." "Why have you come?" asked. "To understand." The High Speaker looked around at the city, the gardens, the happy people. "How did you do this? We had everything, you had nothing. And yet," he gestured weakly at the world around them, "this is more than we ever built." Thought about the question for a long time. How do you explain strength to someone who only understood power? How do you describe light to someone who had lived in darkness? "We built this because we had to," said finally. "We had no choice. When you have nothing, you learn to create everything. When no one helps you, you learn to help each other. When you are told you are worthless, you prove your worth through action." "But we had power," the High Speaker said. "We had resources. We had centuries of civilization." "You had things," said. "We had each other. Things can be taken away. Relationships cannot. Things can break down. Communities endure. You built an empire on fear and control. We built a home on love and cooperation. That is why we survived and you nearly did not." The High Speaker was silent for a long moment. Tears, strange on his alien face, rolled down his cheeks. "I was wrong," he said. "About everything, about your species, about strength, about what matters, I was so wrong." "Yes," said simply, "you were." "Can you ever forgive me?" Considered the question carefully. Forgiveness was not the same as forgetting. It was not saying that what happened was acceptable. It was choosing to let go of the weight, to move forward instead of being chained to the past. "I forgive you," said. "Not for your sake, but for mine. Carrying hatred is exhausting. I would rather use that energy to build something good." The High Speaker closed his eyes. Something in him seemed to release, some tension he had carried for years. "Thank you," he whispered. "That is more than I deserve." He turned to leave, then stopped. "May I ask one more thing?" "Ask." "What would you have done if we had shown you respect? If we had treated you as equals? Would you have stayed?" Smiled sadly. "Yes, we would have stayed and served and helped you build something amazing. All we ever wanted was to be seen, to be valued, to matter. You could have had everything and more. All it would have cost was a little kindness." The High Speaker nodded slowly. "The most expensive lesson I have ever learned." He walked back to his ship, leaning heavily on his guards. He did not look back. Watched him go. He felt no triumph, no satisfaction, only a deep sadness for all that could have been and never was. Joined him as the ship lifted off. What did he want? "Understanding," said, "and forgiveness." "Did you give them to him?" "Yes." Was quiet for a moment. "You are a better person than I am." Shook his head. "I am just tired of being angry. There is too much to build, too much to create, too much to love. Anger takes energy I cannot spare." They walked back to the city together. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Children ran past them laughing. Workers returned from the fields singing old songs. Life flowed around them, beautiful and precious. A young woman approached them. It was daughter, the master farmer who had helped feed both human and alien worlds. She was carrying a basket of fruit from the first harvest of the season. "Try one," she said, offering them each a piece. "This is the new variety I have been developing. It grows faster and tastes than anything on the old worlds." Bit into the fruit. It was perfect, sweet and fresh and full of life, like everything on New Dawn, like the humans themselves. "What will you call it?" asked. Smiled. "I am going to call it resilience, because that is what we are. No matter what happens to us, we bounce back, we grow, we thrive, we become more than we were before." Looked at the fruit in his hand, then at the city around him, then at the stars appearing one by one in the darkening sky. Out there, on 100 worlds, humans and aliens were working together to rebuild what had been broken. They were learning to see each other as partners instead of masters and servants. They were creating a new kind of civilization, one based on respect and cooperation. It would not be easy. There would be setbacks and failures and disappointments. Old prejudices would not disappear overnight. Trust would take generations to build. But it was possible, it was happening, and that was enough. Took his hand. "What are you thinking about?" Smiled. "I am thinking about the future, about what our will inherit, about the universe we are building together." "And what do you see?" He looked at her, at the beautiful city of hope rising against the strange purple sky of New Dawn. "I see everything," he said. "I see absolutely everything." And for the first time in his long life, Captain felt truly free. Not because he had escaped the aliens, not because he had proven them wrong, but because he had found his purpose, his people, his home. The humans had been pushed out. They had watched a civilization collapse, but they had not fallen with it. They had risen like they always did, like they always would. Because that was what humans did. They survived, they adapted, they built. And nothing in the universe could ever take that away from them.